They offered me a ride in a famous tank, so I said, yes! You'll be seeing how I got on in this video, which has been sponsored by the Great Courses Plus, but more of that later. We went to these big buildings and this smoking monster emerged. Nothing your speakers are playing you now conveys how loud it was. But I wasn't to ride in the Chieftain, no. Instead it was this tank, a tank now known by its film role, Fury. They've kept it just as it looked in the film. It is a Sherman M4A2, open brackets 76, close brackets HVSS. Quite a mouthful. It's actually a version of the tank that never existed in World War II, but in the film it is playing the role of an older version of the Sherman, a plain M4. The M4 just means military item of some sort that could be anything number 4. It really was a terrible way of naming things, and supposedly it was Winston Churchill who insisted that the British come up with proper names for the American kit we were to use, and names of historical American generals were used, but never mind. The A number is the later variant number. Confusingly, the A2 came out after the A3 and A4. And A6, but was... never mind. The bracketed 76 is the calibre of the gun, which actually wasn't 76mm but 3 inches, but never mind. The HVSS stands for Horizontal Volute Spring Suspension, which was such a mouthful that most people didn't use this and instead called it an Easy 8 after its smooth ride... Oh, no, not after its smooth ride, apparently after its experimental designation E8. But never mind. I'd like to show you how I leapt into it, but annoying health and safety regs said I had to use this step ladder. I didn't bother with it when I got out, mind.
Other than it's adjustable, it does that.
It does that.
I'm impressed.
The commander's cupola.
So these are the windows that you can quite clearly see in the film daylight through, even though every time we see a shot outside the tank, it's quite clearly nighttime.
Hundreds of Germans will throw themselves in front of this gun here.
Yeah. Why will they do that, though?
They will attack with a shovel.
Ah, yeah. Yep.
Not the Panzerfaust we saw with them earlier.
No, an entire box of them, in fact, we saw, didn't we?
Yep.
The loader's hatch. And the loader's seat. And now, me banging my head on the turret top MG's ammo box.
Oh!
Berlin or bust. Let's eat out, we'll be right.
And now that same bash shown from a different angle.
Lifting lug.
That was for craning the turret off for repairs. Pintle mount for whatever you want to put there.
That's the antenna mount.
And on the rear deck, proper gubbins. A white cross on a jerry can means that it contains water, not fuel. On the inside of the commander's hatch is a rotating ring marked with various angles in hundredths, because they don't use degrees because they're in the army, so it's all mils and hundredths of a circles and stuff. Anyway, when he was hatches down, the commander could read the bearing off this, shout that reading to the gunner, who had a matching dial, and could then rotate the turret to match. The graffiti on the inside was put there by the cast and crew of the film. Sticky tapes did exist in World War II, but they were very rare, very expensive, and rubbish.
It's part and parcel of the film. It's not what anything is put on.
Right. Yes, I did notice in the film that they had stuff. And it's held on with sellotape. And I don't think they had sellotape.
My shield, my rampart.
Now that I'm close to it, I can see that it's not your standard sellotape. It's got a sort of grid pattern woven into it. So this could actually be some attempt at authentic, awful sellotape, which they did have.
This looked like the commander's microphone and radio selector, but it's on the loader's side. But possibly he had one too, because he was also the radio operator.
There's the commander's lower seat, the gunner's main seat, and the commander's separate upper seat, sort of heart-shaped. There's the back of the mantlet, which you can actually see a bit of daylight through. And there's the recoil compensator, which would slow down slightly this breech block as it would fly back after the trigger were pressed. And this bar is what stops me from going too far to my right and getting my rib cage shattered by a moving breech block. And you can see it goes back to there. So there's just that much room And there's not room for a radio, so the radio is in a bustle.
No, I didn't mean that
at
way.
the back of the tank.
You know, then you'd know,
it is painted sort of white, but it's a very, very far off white. I'm very definitely upstairs here.
The driver's position, with his controls in front of him and his instrument panel to his left. On the right, the hull machine gunner's position. Note that in American tanks, the hull gunner has no working sights. He fired blindly or just using his periscope to give him a vague idea of where the bullets he had already shot were landing. There was no way to make his first rounds accurate.
The floor down there.
Hello.
Hello, do I need to get out of your way? Right, I'm one side of the gun, and now I have to get to the other side of the gun. And apparently the way to do this is to go under the gun. Wish me luck. Ooh. Oh, wow. You couldn't be much fatter than me. Wow.
You have to go that side. You have to go that side. The other side, sorry.
Oh, you want me to go back? Okay. All right, I shall do that after I've just get a shot of the gun sight there and the gun aiming kit. Okay, so here I go back. All right. Wow. Okay.
You okay now?
And okay, I'm back.
Although the coaxial machine gun is in front of the loader, he didn't fire it, the gunner did. The loader just loaded it. The commander had this handy lever for controlling the turret traverse, placed where he could reach it when standing up through his opened hatch.
Okay, so the commander would presumably do the big movements and the gunner would then do the final adjustment. So I'm guessing that one of these things is a motor.
This, yeah, well, there you go. There.
That's the motor.
And this is what you turn the turret with all this, and that's the elevation. That's the elevation.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the trigger. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There's also down there
Foot pedals. The gunner used foot pedals to fire his guns, and this is shown in the film, although in the film those don't seem to be in the same place as on the real thing. Don't forget that they made a set of the tank's interior for ease of filming.
That's your lock over there.
Yep.
Yeah. There's your sights.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course.
So it's monocular, so that's blanked out.
Monocular, yes. Yeah. And of course, that's you pull that in, and then you pull that in to dislock it, and then unlock it, and then round, and then read it off that as well.
Where would the ammunition have been? Some of it here, perhaps. Those are clearly modern batteries. Some in the side sponsons, and some around the back of the turret floor.
And it would have been there.
Oh, and we were off. I interrupt this video with gladness. Well, gladness on my part. Actually, I'm interrupting it because it's time to talk to you about my kind sponsor, the Great Courses Plus. But I say interrupt with gladness because, oh boy, I have been in editing hell now for 3 or 4 days and a night trying to put this thing together. This is some of the worst footage I've ever had to edit. The sound is so bad, with engines starting all the time or stopping all the time, or echoes inside the tank, or people talking all over the top of everything. Almost all these shots you've seen up until this point have sound that doesn't actually belong to them. But you don't want to know my problems with all the editing, because you just want to know how you can enjoy life even more than you already are. Well, one of the ways you might do this is to take advantage of a free trial offer with the Great Courses Plus, my kind sponsor. I think I mentioned that. So, what is the Great Courses Plus? Okay, yes, it is possible you don't know. It's an online streaming service for lectures. They have over 11,000 lectures and they're adding to them all the time. And these are delivered by professors from distinguished universities in all sorts of topics about, well, whatever they're expert in, frankly. And if you have watched this video, then there's a reasonable likelihood that you were sucked in because of the movie connection, because Fury, of course, is what we in Britain would call a film, but what they call in America a movie, which is possibly actually a better word. But anyway, so maybe you're the sort of person who watches movies but doesn't really know how to appreciate them. Or maybe you feel that you can appreciate films, but you just don't know how to watch them. Wow! I can say that one of the many lecture courses they have is a 24 lecture course in how to both watch and appreciate great movies. Well, I reckon if you can pull off that double, your quid's in and will impress all sorts of people at parties. And yes, there is a concern. I know a lot of you will be concerned. Is the lecturer someone with a really good scholar's cradle? Well, here he is. And the typewriter. Yeah, I'm not convinced by the typewriter either, frankly. I don't think modern script writers do actually use typewriters like that. I think it's just a movie-like prop that he's using for visual effect. I suspect they use modern word processing software. Yeah, I thought so too. But anyway, well, you can see that he's quite adept at the parallel waving, but does he ever go in for the full cradle? Well, I've learned something about movies, you see, and that is spoilers. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it for you. You just have to watch to find out. So, if you want to take full advantage of the free trial offer, you can click the link in the description beneath this video, which is far and away, frankly, the easiest way to do it. But if you just love typing, like perhaps he does on that old typewriter, well, you can type in www.thegreatcoursesplus.com/Lindybeige, and there it'll take you to the free trial offer, and you can watch loads and loads of lectures on all sorts of topics. And well, it's a bit like school, but it's the good bits of school without the bad bits of school, because, you know, at school someone says something, a teacher might tell you something that's interesting, and rather than think, oh wow, that's interesting, and deriving pleasure from this, you might think to yourself, oh, I suppose I better write this down because there's going to be a test on it. Everything's a pain. But no, with the Great Courses Plus, there are no exams. So you get all the good stuff of, interesting knowledge without actually, fearing that you're going to be tested on it. And that brings about that great sort of feeling I remember from school, which I hated. And there'll be no homework. You'll be fine. You won't get any nightmares, as sometimes I still do even now, about not having done my A-level history homework. Well, none of that, because you just watch the lectures for the sheer joy of it. So, www. Oh, you got the link. Click the link. Right. Okay. Back to this video.
There was a practical purpose of this trip beyond giving a YouTuber a jolly outing. They were training up a new driver, and there were a few hiccups. And we were off. Not at the highest of speeds, but definitely off. No, the logs are not for armour. They are mainly for getting unstuck if the tank bogs down. Something to shove under the tracks for some grip.
So is this a 3-inch gun?
76mm, yeah.
3-incher, yeah. So in fact this would have gone through the front armour of a Tiger.
If you got around about 400 or 500 metres, yeah, I would have thought, yeah.
Well, in the film they're at about 30 yards.
I think the periscopes did rotate once, but now they all seemed to be stuck. I'm not sure, but that could be a smoke mortar.
So what's
This thing is the transport lock for the 50 cal barrel. You're supposed to put the barrel in that when you're motoring along, but it's not brilliantly well placed because it's actually got in the way when we were hatches up. But never mind.
look through the Periscope, see if I can see what I get.
Well, here I am on the inside. I don't think you can hear a word I'm saying. I'm having to raise my voice quite a lot, and the camera is only a foot in front of me. It's very moving much faster, and when the guns were firing,
Wow.
The Shermans are tall tanks, up to 9'9", and supposedly the main reason for this was their tall, round aero petrol engines, the Wright Continental R975 Whirlwind, if you really need to know. This one, though, has ditched the aero engine for two General Motors 6046 diesel engines, which lasted longer and were far more economical with fuel. The tank still had the tall hull, though. Tank crews would practice their emergency leaps from the turret to the ground. A bit daunting on this tank. My brother seemed to be liking the ride, but again, those concerned for his safety urged him to restrain his jubilance.
Oh. A bit of rubber for sealing the hat, but no rubber around the edge of the rim. Nothing to pad that for the crewman. Ooh. Ooh, that didn't sound good.
Several cast pieces of the tank had these big raised numbers. If unique, that would mean that they would have to alter the mould between every casting. I'd have thought that stamping them in would have been easier.
Oh wow! Are we going? No, I thought we were going to go over the bump for a moment.
This was the last of the American Shermans. Why has Bovington got it? Because Bovington is a working army base, and the tank was sent over for trials. The Americans wanted the British to buy more like it. Unfortunately for them, the British by this time had developed the Centurion, which was miles better in just about every way. So, sorry guys, no sale. But thanks for the tank.
The governor's lead doing on this, that's why it keeps hunting, rum, rum, rum.
Right.
It's the governors are when they sent the engine away to be refurbished,
Yeah.
for some reason they didn't do it. I don't know why, but they didn't do it. So the engine's hunting all the time, rum, rum, rum. It's the governors moving around.
Just practice as you like.
Trying to find reverse.
That's it.
When reversing, it would normally be the commander's job to say, left a bit, right a bit. The driver has no rear view.
This side.
Trying to stop the engine now. This takes a while. Phew! What a relief.
So, are you glad you came?
Yes.
Good, good.
Lindybeige!